Welcome to episode 237 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. We are recording live on YouTube on August 3, 2018, with a lot of things to talk about this week, including augmented therapy, the life of long form, regulating social, event SEO, Ryan's toy line, social decay, chicken VR, ISIS burger, LinkedIn voicemail, and much, much more. And we kick it off with the best story of the week, of which BL has the honors. BL, what was the best story of the week?
Well, it might not be the best story of the week so much as I thought you'd get a kick out of it because I know how much you loved Google Glass when you tried it. So this, as it turns out, Google Glass is good for a special kind of therapy. And this is from a Science News story by Maria Temming. And, you know, it may have failed as a high fashion trend for high tech, but it's showing promise as a tool for helping kids with autism navigate social situations, which is a really major breakthrough if it turns out that it works as well as it has in early trials. So there's a smartphone app that pairs with Google Glass, and it uses facial recognition software to give the wearer real-time updates on which emotions people are expressing. So in the pilot, which was described in Digital Medicine magazine, 14 children with autism spectrum disorder used this program at home for about 10 weeks. After the treatment, they showed improved social skills, including increased eye contact and the ability to decode facial expressions, which is one of the difficulties. So what happens is the camera's headset records the faces of people in the child's field of view, and then it feeds that information to the smartphone app. The app, trained on thousands of facial photos, is designed to recognize 8 core expressions, which are happiness, sadness, anger, distrust, surprise, fear, contempt, and calm. And then when the app recognizes one of these feelings, it sends the information to the Google Glass wearer, either by naming the emotion or through the speaker, or displaying an emoticon on the small screen in the field of view. And the families in the initial experiments said that the results they got were good or better than more traditional therapies. And in the traditional therapies, they do similar training, but it goes on for months and months. And there's a therapist and there's a shortage of people trained in this type of therapy. So the kids have to wait as long as 18 months and more. So this may be, this may be a big breakthrough.
Wow, that's fascinating. I'm glad to see Google Glass surviving in some way, shape, or form.
That's useful.
Yeah, well, I was obviously fascinated enough by the concept of Google Glass to get myself a copy. Though it ended disastrously for me, I still think that the concept is sound. It just couldn't overcome the social hurdles for a consumer application.
Did you sit on them? What happened to them?
Well, for me, it was 2 things. Is one, that just didn't work. The technology wasn't ready for prime time, so it just didn't work. It was Saturday Night Live episode where people are always nodding their head up and down to activate it, and it doesn't activate all the time. So there's a problem just with the technology. It wasn't ready. But the most important thing was the social aspect of it. It was just, you felt like a geek wearing them, and it was very
feel like a geek wearing them. It's geek chic.
People looked at you like you were a glass hole, which you actually were.
Well, I think that's going to pass. I think that's coming back around, Dave.
Yeah.
Maybe you can revive yours.
Yeah, right. So this is a fascinating article I want to talk about. From the Next Web's Brandon Geary, who makes a compelling argument for long-form content. And the reason I kind of bring it up is I kind of had been making this argument all along, and I had a discussion with a bunch of people about content, and this group of people was saying that we need shorter content, quick content, and it all has to be video and everything. And that's, I'm a major proponent of video as content form. It has to be the right application and, where it makes sense and so forth. But the argument of short, quick content kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I'm going to run down the arguments that Brandon Geary makes, and we'll put a link in the show notes for people who are interested to read the full article. But his argument is
the long article, right?
Yeah, the long article, right? Yeah. So obviously there is a competition for content. There's the content shock argument, which I kind of thought was bullshit, but anyway, another story. There is a lot of content out there, so gaining visibility for a lot of competition for it. At the same time, engagement is decreasing. Engagement in content is decreasing. Content rarely goes viral. He cites Facebook's algorithm change that favors, quote, meaningful interactions, unquote, between friends. And the world has, this was an interesting part of his argument, the world has turned deadly serious. Life and death policy issues dominate the news. We've got North Korea. We've got now Iran. There's state-sanctioned kidnapping by our own country. Russia's attack on our nation via social media. So the public is turning to more substantial content as a result. It cites BuzzSumo data that 7 of the top 10 most shared articles were from Harvard Business Review over the last 5 years that were published in 2017. The median number of shares for posts published by The Economist increased from 43 in 2015 to 78 in 2017. And then the average sharing of New York Times content increased fourfold between January 2015 and September 2017. So he argues that creating long form content will last, the content that will last. Sharing the magazine articles, which tend to be longer, went up 11.3% since December. And then, kind of the links that articles generate increase the odds they'll be found both in social and found through other vehicles, right? Directly through those links. I would add that long form content gets more visibility in search. I see it every day in the work that I do. It tends to get shared more on social because it looks like it's more valuable. Even if people don't read it who are sharing it, they probably share it because it looks like, you see these ultimate guides all the time. Probably gets shared more on dark web through chat and through email, and it builds greater trust because it demonstrates a command of the subject, and it demonstrates your expertise. So it's a great expert positioning tactic. The article argues that you should play the long game with influencers. It cites an example of back in 2011, Nike signed an 11-year contract with a young soccer player named Neymar Jr., who at the time was 18 years old, and he was an up-and-coming player in Brazil, but became a worldwide superstar 2 years later when he signed with FC Barcelona. So making the investment in young up-and-coming influencers while they still have a relatively small audience could pay off in the long term. And you think about that just in terms of everyday marketing. Podcasters are an example. You may have a smaller audience, but clearly if they have potential and there's potential to grow, making a relationship with those influencers and investing in them, helping them grow, can pay off dividends in the long run. So it was an interesting article. We'll leave a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, I would have to say it depends. I have written for sites where every article had to be 1,200 words. Well, that's ridiculous because every article doesn't require 1,200 words. It should take as long as it takes to tell the story in the most compact way. And sometimes that's a long form and sometimes it's not. I personally tend towards shorter forms with less of illustration, and I find that works and that has as much potential to go viral. But I understand what you're saying, and the fact that people share it without reading it is a little scary too, though.
Wow.
But they do that about everything. That's absolutely true. Yeah. So as everybody knows, there's a lot of talk about what to do to get Facebook to regulate itself and to stop all of the interference and the fake news and everything else. And so There was an article this week in Axios by David McCabe, and Casey Newton reported on it as well. And it was about how Democrats would crack down on big tech. And it was a report that Axios obtained from Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, in which they laid out 20 different paths to address problems posed by big tech platforms. They range from putting a price on individual users' data, an idea that's been floating around for a very long time, to funding media literacy programs. And actually just I don't know if it was today, but it's certainly, I think it was this week, Facebook has launched a learning academy for young people to learn how to be literate in social media. But in any case, in Senator Warner's report, which I believe is 1,500 pages long, they foresee an intelligent way to handle privacy and disinformation if the Democrats can flip the House. And the proposals are a comprehensive approach to just about every aspect of social media. And they divide the proposal in the paper into 3 lines: combating disinformation, protecting user privacy, and promoting competition in the tech space. So the paper says our idea would be to make platforms legally liable for claims like defamation, invasion of privacy, false light, public disclosure of private facts if they fail to take down doctored video and audio, or so-called deep fakes, which are the fabricated footage that we've talked about, if a victim secured a necessary judgment regarding the sharing of that content. Then you have to have a judgment. But in terms of misinformation, disinformation, and exploitation of technology, they had ideas that include requiring, and I like this one, requiring networks to label automated bots as what they are, and making them verify their identities despite the significant consequences to free speech, because something has to be done, and that's a reasonable approach. It also suggests legally requiring platforms to make regular disclosures of how many fake accounts they've deleted, ending Section 230 protection for defamation, legally requiring large platforms to create APIs for academic research, and spending more money to combat cyber threats from Russia and other state-level actors. And they suggested that to increase visibility into competition, platforms could put a monetary value on our user data. It suggests using a U.S. form, and you knew this was coming, of GDPR, designating platforms as information fiduciaries with legal responsibility for protecting our data, and empowering the Federal Trade Commission to make rules around data privacy, and then creating a legislative ban tricking users into accepting terms and conditions without reading them. Nobody reads them. The paper acknowledges that these policy ideas have plenty of questions, and in many cases there are flaws in the proposals, it says, and then maybe those flaws undercut the goal the proposal's trying to achieve, or they pose a political problem that we can't overcome at this time. But the big picture is that Warner, who made his fortune in telecommunications before he ran for office, has long been a prominent critic of major social media platforms, and overseeing the Intelligence Committee's investigation of the Russian election. He's in a position to know a lot more than just about anybody else. And other members of Congress say they share some of his concerns about disinformation, privacy, and competition. So the reality check, McCabe says, is even with vocal support, major technology proposals often fail to reach the velocity that they need to become actually enacted. And you'd have to have a Democratic wave in November that would put more momentum behind these ideas. But right now, they're nothing but ideas. And then Casey Newton said, these proposals remain far from becoming law, but perhaps not as far as tech platforms would wish. Then at 2:30 a.m. on July 31st, Facebook announced that they'd removed 35 bad actors, which we'll talk about later, but they removed 32 pages and accounts from Facebook and Instagram because they said they were involved in coordinated inauthentic behavior that is not allowed on Facebook. Quote, because we don't want people or organizations creating networks of accounts to mislead others about who they are or what they're doing. Now they say that? Okay. So anyway, there's hope for some big changes to come, but they're not going to happen without a Democratic sweep.
Well, they probably won't happen even with a Democratic sweep. Those are all very serious and substantial policy solutions, and certainly worth talking about. But these are among the most powerful companies in the world, and they have a ton of money to put behind lobbying. And you know what happens when the sausage gets made, a lot of stuff gets left on the floor. So I really don't expect to see much of anything. What I think would be the easiest and the lowest hanging fruit to get past is just pressuring these companies into putting money behind substantial media literacy campaigns. That's something that any parent should be concerned about having their kids learn, is understanding how media works.
Teaching that in school, and in some places they are actually. But I mean, I like the idea of labeling bots and so that you're not looking at humans. But there's a lot to unpack here. There's an enormous amount of information and disinformation, and something will have to change. Whether these are the things that will change remains to be seen. But when you've watched the hearings where the senators and the congressmen don't seem to understand diddly squat about what these platforms are or what they do, here you have somebody who clearly does understand, and he is in a position of power. And so it's a pretty substantial report. I'll link to it in the show notes if people want to read it. It's pretty hefty, but it's a topic we all have to address somehow. Anyhow, onward.
Yeah, well, if the social channels do nothing in the wake of all the abuse of the platforms, they may just decay away. Speaking of decay,
I love it.
There's a great Boing Boing article that points to a Romanian illustrator named Andrei Lacatusu, I believe is how you pronounce the last name, who has created some graphic illustrations, a series of graphic illustrations titled Social Decay. And they are photorealistic images of social media logos, but portraying them as rusting signs on abandoned buildings. They're brilliant. So there's one example I'll cite, and we'll link to it in the show notes so you can see the rest of them. But it is the Google logo that looks like it's on the side of an overhead pass to a highway or something. That's all dirty and ragged, and the second G from the Google logo is missing, and there's the trace of the G in its place. So it's very cool, and again, we'll link to it in the show notes so people can see it.
I like that a lot. Yeah, it could go that way, but well, let's go on. So Adweek had an article that I will link to from one of my favorite reporters, Amy Core, and she's writing about a campaign that shows how plastic straws suck the life out of ocean animals. And in the images, there's a bird with a straw down its throat, and it's in a glass. And, it just is making the point, people are like, what's so bad about straws? Well, they're ingested by animals. And it's just a clever campaign that I thought I would point out.
There are a lot of, there's a big move to switch to paper straws.
They work just as well.
Yeah, no, like Starbucks is planning on redesigning or eliminating straws anyway.
We should all just have sippy cups.
That's kind
bring
of
them where we go.
I think. Yep. So this is Google has rolled out a new feature of mobile search. This is from a Google blog post by Nishant Ranka. And now you can find events while you're on the go using the Google app or on the mobile web. If you do a search for events, it brings up a clear summary of the activities right within the search results. So this is in line with a lot of the evolution that Google is doing of search, where they're answering things or giving you what you search for within the search itself, rather than having to click through to find what you're looking for. So this is culled from sites across the web that have event info and event sites like Eventbrite and Meetup. You can search for things like rock concerts in Minneapolis or art events this weekend on your phone, and you'll get at-a-glance details such as the event title, the date and time, and location of the event in question. When you tap on the event, you get more details, or you can actually go directly to the website for that event to buy tickets from the site. Search results include filters for today, tomorrow, next week, this month. You can search for events near me and see what's happening around the corner. There's a Google developer page that we'll link to that explains how to use event schema to mark up your event listings on your own website. So they show up in these event searches, but if that's too technical for you, or you don't have the capacity to do that, you just make sure you use Eventbrite as a tool to post your events using Eventbrite, and that'll show up in the search results.
That's very cool. I like that. So I wasn't sure whether I should put this in best or worst, but there's a little boy whose name is Ryan, and Ryan is a YouTube star whose videos get billions of views, and he goes by Ryan. His parents don't want to give any more name than that because of his young age, and he's going to debut a line of toys through Walmart. And the line includes slime, stuffed animals, and other merchandise that'll be in Walmart next month. And his video, I've watched them. They're hilarious. They seem to involve his parents playing with him. They're animated with all these cheesy effects. They're really loud. What's interesting, speaking of long form content, is they're anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes long. And they're basically pictures of this kid playing with toys. He's got a bear that's talking to a chicken, and and then there's like animated things that happen. So the kid has 6 YouTube channels, and they've absolutely enthralled children. And he makes a video just about every day, and people send him toys to play with, and they show him reacting to them. And Pocket Watch negotiated licensing deals for a handful of online video stars who are going to expand their lines through toys, apparel, and products for the home. So his merchandise is designed for kids ages 3 and up, and his is the first to come to market. His YouTube channel has 15 million subscribers. I'll put one of his videos on there. You won't want to watch it for long. Because you're not 3 to 6 years old.
Those kid reviews of toys are absolutely huge. A friend of mine, his son absolutely loves them and watches them all the time. A coworker of mine, her children want to invite one of these stars to their birthday party because they feel like that they're their friends because they watch them. It's that intimate. So
well, when we were kids, there was a lot of complaining about how there were all the toys advertised and they looked so great on TV, and you felt like you wanted to have them, and then you got them home and it was really not. It didn't do all those things.
Yep.
These are the real toys, and the kids are showing you what they do with them and how they use their imagination. But what's really funny is that his father and his mother get in the videos and they sit on the floor and they play with them, and the videos they're homemade. That's what they are, and they're hilarious. But you don't want to watch more than one, believe me.
Are we done with the good stuff?
Yeah, I guess we are. That brings us to bad news. So
I got a really bad one.
Okay, go ahead.
This is from an Adweek article by Patrick Coffey. There's a I'm not going to say the name of the social media agency in question because I'm just not. Anyway, there's a social media agency in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, that posted a tweet to their client, Z Burger's Twitter account, that used an image from an ISIS video of the moment before journalist James Foley was executed.
Are you kidding?
And the tweet said, "When you say you want a burger and someone says, okay, let's hit McDonald's," along with an image of a burger and a line, "you disgrace me." So this was clearly the owner of the agency quickly issued a series of apologies, both in video and written form, clearly distraught that this happened.
Who approved it?
Z-Burger account also shared the videos. The agency, the explanation was the agency had been experiencing aggressive growth. They had been hiring a lot of people, didn't have the proper supervision in place. You know, you're having young people who don't know what the hell the image is about. I mean, clearly they just pulled the image off and somebody thought that was a clever thing to do and didn't realize what the image was about, and coupled that with a tweet that somehow made it through. So my thing is when we do social media for clients, we have a system in place. I review all the tweets before they go out. They don't go out, they get scheduled, and the client we make sure that the client knows that they're there to be reviewed, and we get the okay, and then they go out. So there needs to be that system in place, and clearly something happened here. But, you know, it can also happen that somebody hit send instead of schedule. I thought they hit schedule, but they actually hit send, and it goes out without getting reviewed by someone internally. So
yes, but I mean, sometimes you're reacting to real-time events, and this is my commercial for hiring experienced workers who are more likely to have any kind of judgment. You know, some of the best things that have happened on social media were during the blackout in the World Series football game, whatever it was, and Oreos immediately jumped in with really clever marketing. I mean, sometimes that's what it takes.
Well,
so
that's true.
You need to have some kind of checks and balances for sure.
Which is what I was saying. But I mean, that case, that situation in question was the agency and the company in the room at the same time, watching the Super Bowl, ready to pounce on something, doing it. You know, they were. That was the system. There was the agency taking it. I mean, you can't do live tweeting with just an agency doing it.
That's for sure.
You gotta have the client in the room.
Well, sometimes. So this is one of the worst campaigns I can imagine. It's about getting a clucking clue. You know, I have to begin by saying that I don't do feathers. I don't eat chicken. The only meat I eat is bacon, and yes, I should be ashamed of myself. But the National Chicken Council, and that is a real thing, thinks that we want to go behind the scenes to the lifestyle of a broiler chicken. So they've created a VR experience that is an extension of the chicken check-in project. There really is a chicken check-in project. So apparently chicken consumption is breaking all records, and so the National Chicken Council wanted to show us where our chickens come from, what they're fed, and how they're murdered. So they said, we know, it's a quote, "We know that people want more information about chicken production and that most have not visited a chicken farm. So we're bringing the farm to them," says Tom Super, that's his real name, spokesperson for the National Chicken Council. Just be glad that's not your job. So he says, through our virtual reality tours, viewers are able to see the way most chickens are hatched, raised, and processed. That's a synonym for murdered. And it's a fairly immersive experience. So processed, again, is a nice way of saying murdered. I do not want to see that. And we're proud to give a close look at our birds, their lives, and how they get to our table. So we plan to bring the experience to consumers, not only online, but to trade shows, schools, and various other events. So please spare me.
Okay.
That's disgusting. Really. And they show the little baby chickens, and they're all smushed in these like confined spaces. And then they show like the chickens in cages, and they're all smushed in. And I'm sorry, I don't want to know that.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Not unless I'm rescuing them. Well, chickens are nice animals, actually, from what I've read.
Okay, I don't want to talk about chickens anymore.
Well, you want to talk about hamburgers.
I want to talk about voicemail.
Okay, let's do that.
This is from a LinkedIn post by Zach Hendlin. LinkedIn is rolling out, wait for it, the ability to record and send voice messages.
Oh, please.
Up to 1 minute in LinkedIn messaging. So you can just tap on your microphone icon on the mobile messaging keyboard, tap and hold on the microphone and record your voice message, release your finger to send it. If you want to cancel it, you have the option by sliding your finger away from the microphone icon while holding it down. The voice messaging is rolling out in LinkedIn app on iOS and Android now as we speak. You can receive voice messages mobile on the web, and the feature will be available globally to everyone in the next few weeks. So yeah, like I need more cold calling, right? There's some great headlines that kind of capture what everybody's thinking about this new feature. Mashable's headline was LinkedIn has voicemail now, but please don't use it. Engadget headline was LinkedIn adds a voice messaging feature you weren't missing. And CNN's Money's headline was LinkedIn adds voice messages for some reason.
That's a good one. That's really a good one. Yeah, one more thing I mean, I didn't look at my email for like 3 nights. And I had to I swear to you, I eliminated 2,500 emails, and I started to unsubscribe from things, but that just takes too long. So I just like zap it. And if I want to unsubscribe from it, I just put it in spam. I mean, I'm sorry, but I get 850 of these a day. If you think you're going to start calling me with messages, think again. So I don't have any more bad news. Chickens were my bad news.
All right, let's go to cool stuff. What do you got?
Oh, I have something really cool that somehow escaped my purview, and that is animatic, and it lets you embrace your inner cartoonist, and you're able to create animations with your drawings. And what's cool about it is, as you're doing it, it shows you the position of your previous frames, so that you're able to make the continuity happen, and it basically places your drawings one after another to allow you to create animations. And then you can send them to your friends by text and add them to social media, or send your animations directly to Photoshop, or upload them to the Creative Cloud files. So very cool. And Instagram has many of them that are very creative people have done. They even make them so their ways into movies and TV intros, and you also can do these flip book style animations. Remember those? Mm-hmm. And it's free, and it's absolutely great. I spoke with Darren Paul today, the co-founder of the company. They have a pro version, but really for most of us, you can make GIFs, and you can make the things, labels, all sorts of wonderful things, and it's free.
Very cool. If I had 9 lives, one of them would have been being an animator, because I absolutely adore animation. So I will have to.
I think most of us do, and this makes it possible. I mean, and you can make as many frames as you want. Some people have done fairly complex things, which really is cool. Very cool. And you have another?
I do. Podcastguests.com. This is like Helper Reporter out for podcasts. So if you're familiar with Helper Reporter out, Shankman, you can post, if you're a podcaster, you can post requests for guests for your podcast. If you are an expert and you want to be on podcasts, you can look for podcasts. You can subscribe to this, and you get like a daily email, or it's actually not daily, but an occasional email, several times a week maybe, of podcasters who are looking for guests. And if your expertise matches that, you can fill out a form and potentially be a guest on the podcast. So very, very cool service.
That is a cool service. So the thing I found today in my email was a suite of Google tools, ranging from Google Culture and Trends, some of which I was familiar, most of which I was familiar with, but some of which I was not. So in Google Trends, you can find out what people in your target category are searching for. You can find competitive highlights to show you where you stand against others in your industry. There's Google surveys. There's YouTube trends also, which I actually didn't know about, and consumer insights, and just a whole suite of tools, most of which are designed for marketing, some of which, even though they're not specifically meant for marketing, apply to the things that we do. So absolutely worth taking a look. And of course, they're all free.
Yeah, I use most of that stuff a lot.
Me too, but there were a few I didn't know.
Cool.
Time for a commercial.
Let's go on to now. This is not a commercial. This is just I have my monthly roundup of marketing reports posted for all the marketing reports. In July, there were 56 reports in all, with links to them all on one page. Top reports include Return Path, which has a state of email marketing report, Nielsen's mid-year music report, and ComScore's state of over-the-top television. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes for people who are interested in all that research.
Very good post. I read it. That brings us to your daily numbers and then to politics.
Exactly. So daily numbers, e-commerce market share. This is the percentage of U.S. retail e-commerce sales ranked. And not surprisingly, Amazon is number one with 49%, followed by eBay. Is well 6.6%. Wow, that's a huge difference.
That is.
Apple 3.9%, Walmart 3.7%, the Home Depot 1.5%, Best Buy 1.3%, Q-Rate Retail Group, which is the home shopping network and a couple of other things, 1.2%, Macy's 1.2%, Costco 1.2%, and lastly 10th, Wayfair 1.1% with their annoying commercials.
I bet they're coming up though.
Well, you'd hope so with all the money they're spending on
right.
commercials.
So this brings us to politics, which we save for last because those of you who don't want to hear about politics can go now. So, but you will find, if you're leaving, you will find the show notes on BeyondSocialMediaShow.com, number 237, and we will have links to everything we covered. But go ahead, politics number one. Go ahead, Dave.
All right. So this is from a USA Today article by Louis Villalobos. There is a woman in Colorado who is putting up some interesting billboards. They have the image of the hammer and sickle that is being used to replace the O in GOP for Grand Old Party on billboards in Grand Junction, Colorado. The scheme is the work of resident Ann Landman, who said she's upset with the Trump administration's actions on Russia, immigration, and tariffs. She's received funding help from several billboards throughout the area, and her plan is to keep the billboards up until the fall elections. Several people, as she's quoted as saying in the article, several people have walked cash right up to my front door. One guy dropping off enough in cash, but to buy a whole week of the billboard. Grand Junction sits squarely in Trump country. Mesa County gave Trump 64% of the vote during the 2016 presidential election. Quote, "It seems like the billboard really hit a nerve with people," she said. "Even Republicans have emailed me to say they are outraged at this administration and don't want to belong to this party anymore." So Landman got permission to use the image from Mad Dog PAC, which is the organization that owned it. But I thought that was an interesting, clever use of communication.
It definitely is. Out of home. Yes, I love it. Many of you have already seen this, but this is, everybody complains about the weather and nobody does anything about it. Everybody's complaining about politics, but nobody does anything about it. Well, I happen to think Sasha Baron Cohen is doing something about it. And so this is from a NPR story by Scott Newman, and last week, Georgia State Representative Jason Spencer, who bared his buttocks and yelled racial slurs on camera in an episode of Sasha Baron Cohen's satirical series, Who's America, has announced that he will resign from the legislature despite his earlier insistence that he would stay. So in this episode that aired last Sunday, Spencer appears with Cohen, and Cohen is posing as a fictitious ex-Israeli intelligence captain, Aaron Morad, and he claims to be making an anti-terrorism video. And he persuades Spencer to use the N-word and drop his pants in what Cohen's character describes as a demonstration of terrorism deterrence tactics. So Spencer pulls down his pants and runs backwards into Sacha Baron Cohen while screaming, "America!" and a demonstration of how to intimidate ISIS with the threat of homosexuality. And he tells them, if your buttocks touch the terrorists, they're afraid they'll become gay. And, you know, first of all, Sacha Baron Cohen is not an Israeli army captain, and he's wearing heavy makeup, and he has a ridiculous accent, and yet none of the people who he've tricked have noticed that. So Spencer told the Journal-Constitution in Atlanta that he was denied final approval, no kidding, before the episode aired. The media company's deceptive and fraudulent behavior is exactly why President Donald Trump was elected, he said. Yeah, I guess so. So you really have to watch the show because it is freaking hilarious.
Yes, it is. It's almost too hilarious. It's almost too cringeworthy to watch.
I know. I mean, the guy really did that. He did have nice red underwear on. I'll give him that. But, you know, I mean, there were cameras. There were other people there. Are you nuts? Yes, he is. I mean, absolutely. You know, and that's never going away, of course. None of that ever does.
It's hilarious, but it's also sad that people like that get elected.
That they get elected and that they then fall for things so completely transparent. I mean, seriously. But you really have to watch. It's on Showtime on Sunday nights. And by the way, Sunday night, Better Call Saul is coming back, my all-time favorite show. I love that show. So that brings us to the end.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So David Erickson, my very charming co-host, is on Twitter as D. Erickson. He blogs at eStrategyBlog.com and creativepr.com/blog. His YouTube channel is eStrategy. And I am BL Ochman. I'm on Twitter as @What'sNext. I blog at What's Next Blog. My YouTube channel is What's Next Blog, and my business channel, business website is blochman.com, and Beyond Social Media Show is on the web at beyondsocialmediashow.com. We're on YouTube as Beyond Social Media Show. We're on Twitter as BS Media Show. We're on iTunes, where we hope you will subscribe and leave a review. And we're also on Stitcher and iHeartRadio. And is it called Google Voice? Why can't I remember this, Dave?
Google Home.
Google Home. We're on Google Home. So all you have to do is say
Echo.
Google Echo.
No, Amazon Echo.
We're on that thing that Amazon makes that you can have in your home. And all you have to do is say, play Beyond Social Media Show, and it does. And we'll be back next week, same time, same bat channel. And we thank you for watching tonight.
Thanks for watching.